August 19th, 1944, 7:42 a.m. The 30-06 bullet tore through General Major Werner Schultz's skull at 2,800 feet per second, splattering brain matter across the tactical map he'd been studying. The German officers surrounding him scattered like roaches as their commander's body crumpled onto the hood of his staff car. Nobody heard the shot. Nobody saw the muzzle flash. 800 yards away, in a destroyed French church tower, Sergeant Henry Hawk Lawson worked the bolt on a rifle that wasn't supposed to exist in this war. A civilian hunting rifle. A toy, according to his instructors. The weapon they'd laughed at. The weapon that just decapitated the German defensive command in a single trigger pull. This is the story of how a Virginia mountain boy with his daddy's deer rifle changed the entire Allied advance across France. And it starts with a truth the U.S. Army didn't want to admit. Sometimes the wrong weapon in the right hands beats the right weapon in the wrong hands. Every single time. France, summer 1944. The Allied breakout from Normandy should have been a steamroller. American tanks rolling east, crushing Hitler's armies, liberating Paris by September. Should have been. Wasn't. Because along a 15-mile stretch of ridgeline outside the city of Brest, the entire 2nd Infantry Division had slammed into a brick wall named Werner Schultz. General Major Schultz wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be dead or captured, like most of the Wehrmacht command after D-Day. Instead, this Eastern Front veteran had rallied scattered German units into a cohesive defensive line that was bleeding American forces white. Every attack predicted, every flanking maneuver ambushed, every artillery barrage answered with devastating counter-battery fire. Division intelligence knew why. Schultz was personally coordinating the defense from a command post barely a mile behind the front lines. Close enough to see the battlefield. Far enough to avoid American artillery. Smart. Calculated. Untouchable. In 3 weeks, his defensive line had cost the 2nd Infantry 340 casualties. 40 men dead in a single day trying to punch through his kill zones. The advance that should have taken 72 hours was entering its 4th week with no end in sight. Division Command tried everything. Artillery bombardment that cratered the ridgeline but left the command post intact. Airstrikes that got cancelled due to weather. A commando raid that got slaughtered before reaching the German lines. Schultz remained untouched, orchestrating his defense like a conductor with an orchestra of death. And then somebody in Division G to intelligence looked at a map and noticed something. A destroyed church. Bell tower still standing. Direct line of sight to Schultz's command post. Distance, 800 yards. The American snipers were brought in. Best marksmen in the division, carrying Springfield M1903A4 rifles with Weaver scopes. Military precision. Military training. Military failure. The first team lasted 6 hours before a German artillery barrage forced them out. Their long-range shot missed by 12 feet. The second team did worse, hitting nothing but French dirt. At 800 yards, the Springfields simply couldn't deliver consistent accuracy under field conditions. The bullet drop was too severe, the wind drift too unpredictable. The rifles were designed for 300-yard engagements, maybe 500 in perfect conditions. 800 yards was competition distance, Olympic distance, impossible distance for military hardware. 40 more Americans died while Division Command debated an airstrike that might never come. That's when a 23-year-old sergeant from the mountains of Western Virginia stepped into his company commander's tent, carrying a secret he'd hidden since boot camp. Henry Lawson didn't look like a legend. 5'9", lean as a fence post, with calloused hands and a Virginia drawl thick enough to cut with a knife. Before the war, he'd been a gunsmith's son in the Shenandoah Valley. Nothing special, nothing remarkable, except for one thing. By age 16, Henry Lawson could shoot the wings off a fly at 300 yards. His father, Thomas Lawson, ran the best gunsmith shop in 3 counties. Politicians, lawmen, and competitive shooters came from as far as Richmond for Thomas's custom work. Henry grew up in that shop, learning to read metal the way other kids read books. By 12, he could disassemble any rifle blindfolded. By 14, he was outperforming adults at shooting competitions. By 16, his father handed him a Winchester Model 70 and said 5 words that would echo across a French battlefield 8 years later. "This rifle is perfect. Keep it." Henry kept it. Through high school, through his apprenticeship at his father's shop, through 10,000 practice rounds on the mountain ranges of Virginia, he learned that rifle the way a concert pianist learns their instrument. Every quirk, every personality trait, the way the barrel heated and shifted after the 3rd shot, the exact 2-pound, 4-ounce trigger break, the slight leftward drift in cold weather. He didn't just shoot the Winchester, he became the Winchester. When Henry enlisted in 1942, the Army spotted his talent immediately. Sniper training at Camp Perry, Ohio, elite marksmanship program. He showed up, carrying his Winchester in a leather case, and the instructors stopped him at the gate. "What the hell is that, Private?" "My rifle, sir." The head instructor, a grizzled sergeant named Kowalski, actually laughed. "That's not a rifle. That's a civilian toy. Put it away before you embarrass yourself." Henry tried explaining. The Winchester Model 70 was mechanically superior to the Springfield in measurable ways. Smoother action, cleaner trigger, match-grade barrel from the factory. Competitive shooters preferred it for a reason. Kowalski didn't care about reasons. "Leave the deer rifle at home, son. This is a real war." Henry was issued a Springfield M1903A4. He qualified expert with it, scored in the top 5%. But something was wrong. The Springfield's trigger had creep. The stock didn't fit his shoulder. The scope mounted differently. Small things. Critical things. Things that didn't matter on a 300-yard training range, but would mean death at 800 yards under fire. When Henry shipped to Europe, he smuggled the Winchester in his personal gear. The Springfield for inspections. The Winchester for when it mattered. And now, standing in Captain Morrison's tent, with 40 dead Americans on his conscience, it mattered. "Sir, I can make that shot." Morrison looked up from the casualty reports. "You saw what happened to the other teams." "They were using the wrong rifles, sir." "The wrong rifles? They're using Springfields, same as you." Henry hesitated. Then, "I have a different rifle, sir. A Winchester Model 70, civilian hunting rifle. I've been shooting it since I was 16. The silence in that tent could have choked a horse. Morrison stared at this mountain boy sergeant who'd just confessed to smuggling unauthorized civilian hardware into a combat zone. Regulations were crystal clear. Personal weapons were forbidden. Court-martial offense. But Morrison had 40 dead men and a German general who needed to die. "You're telling me you want to attempt an 800-yard shot on a general with a deer rifle?" "Yes, sir. It's the most accurate rifle I've ever fired. I know every inch of it. I can make this shot." Morrison should have said no, should have arrested Henry on the spot. Instead, he said 4 words. "If you miss, you die." Henry didn't blink. "I won't miss, sir." 2 hours later, at 0300 hours on August 18th, Henry Lawson began his infiltration of the church tower. He carried his Winchester, 60 rounds of hand-loaded ammunition his father had made before the war, a spotting scope, and a notebook filled with ballistic calculations. The approach took 4 hours of crawling through rubble, while German flares turned night into day every few minutes. By dawn, he was in position. The tower was a ruin, half the roof gone. Bells crashed into fragments below. But the stone walls held, and a narrow window gave him perfect line of sight to Schultz's command post. 800 yards of French countryside, 3 distinct wind zones, 12 inches of bullet drop. Henry set up his rifle on a pile of stones and began the most important surveillance of his life. For 16 hours, he watched. He memorized the German patterns. He calculated wind drift by studying grass movement. He identified Schultz by his gray hair and the deference other officers showed. The general appeared 3 times during the day, always from the same direction, always standing at the same spot near the map table, always for exactly 4 minutes. The shot would come at dawn. Henry spent the night motionless, running calculations in his head. At 0730 hours on August 19th, Schultz's staff car appeared on the road. Henry tracked it through his spotting scope. The car stopped. Doors opened. Officers emerged. And there he was. Gray hair, confident stride, walking to the map table like he owned the world. Henry shifted to his rifle scope. The Winchester's crosshairs found the general's head. Deep breath. Hold. Exhale. Heartbeat slowing. Crosshairs steady. 4 clicks left for the first wind zone. 6 clicks right for the final zone. Net adjustment, 2 clicks right. 12 clicks up for elevation. The crosshairs settled 18 inches above Schultz's head. At 800 yards, the bullet would drop exactly that far. Henry's finger touched the trigger his father had tuned 8 years ago. The trigger he'd pulled 10,000 times. The trigger that knew his touch like a lover. He squeezed. The Winchester cracked. The recoil kissed his shoulder. The bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, rising on its trajectory for the first 300 yards before gravity claimed it. At 400 yards, it peaked and began to fall. At 600 yards, wind pushed it 4 inches right. At 700 yards, the second wind zone pushed it back 3 inches left. At 800 yards, 1 full second after Henry pulled the trigger, the 30-06 round arrived. General Major Werner Schultz never knew what killed him. The bullet entered below his left ear and exited through his right temple, taking most of his brain with it. His body collapsed across the map he'd been studying. Officers scattered. Chaos erupted. 800 yards away, Henry worked the bolt and chambered another round. But nobody approached the body. They were all diving for cover, unable to locate the shot's origin. Good. Henry gathered his equipment and began his withdrawal, crawling through the drainage ditch while German artillery pounded the empty tower behind him. The German defensive line collapsed within 24 hours. Without Schultz's coordination, subordinate commanders couldn't maintain cohesion. American forces broke through in 3 places simultaneously. The road to Brest opened. 40 men had died trying to crack that line. 1 bullet from a toy rifle succeeded. When Henry reported to Morrison's tent the next morning, the captain just stared at him. 800 yards, with a hunting rifle. Yes, sir. Morrison shook his head. What's so special about that Winchester? Henry thought about his father's workshop, the smell of gun oil and walnut wood. 10,000 practice rounds on Virginia mountainsides. I know the rifle, sir. The trigger breaks at exactly 2 pounds, 4 ounces. The barrel drifts left after 3 shots. In cold weather, It pulls right by half an inch at 500 yards. I don't just shoot it. I am it. Morrison picked up a form. I'm putting you in for the Silver Star, and I'm issuing an exception authorizing your Winchester for continued combat use. Henry smiled for the first time in weeks. But the story doesn't end there, because that single shot didn't just kill a general. It killed an entire military doctrine about standardization and regulation. The sniper instructors at Camp Perry never admitted they were wrong, but word spread through the shooting community like wildfire. A civilian Winchester in the hands of a Virginia gunsmith's son had made one of the longest confirmed kills of the European theater. The rifle they called a toy had changed the war. But here's what nobody knew yet. That 800-yard shot wasn't even the craziest thing Henry Lawson would do with his Winchester. Because 3 weeks later, in the forests outside Bastogne, he'd face an impossible choice. Use the Springfield like regulations demanded, or trust the toy one more time for a shot that would make 800 yards look like child's play. And in part 2, you'll see why that decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. One bullet, 800 yards, one dead German general. Henry Lawson's Winchester Model 70 had just pulled off the impossible, and the U.S. Army should have been celebrating. Should have been handing out medals and authorization forms. Instead, 3 days after Werner Schultz's brain matter decorated a French roadside, Henry stood at attention in front of Colonel Theodore Blackwood, 2nd Infantry Division's executive officer, getting his ass handed to him. Because the Army doesn't celebrate rule breakers. The Army crushes them. You smuggled an unauthorized civilian weapon into a combat zone, Sergeant. Blackwood's voice could freeze vodka. You violated standing orders regarding personal firearms. You operated outside established protocols for sniper operations. Do you understand the charges I could bring against you? Henry kept his eyes forward. Yes, sir. And yet you stand here expecting praise? No, sir. I expect to do my job, sir. Blackwood's face turned purple. This wasn't going well. And here's what Henry didn't know yet. The fight over his Winchester was about to become bigger than one sergeant, one rifle, or one dead general. It was about to expose the ugliest truth in military bureaucracy. Institutions would rather lose wars than admit they were wrong. Colonel Blackwood wasn't stupid. He'd read the after-action reports. He knew Henry's shot had broken the stalemate that cost 40 American lives. He knew the German defensive line collapsed within hours. He knew Division Command was recommending Henry for the Silver Star. None of it mattered. Because Blackwood was a West Point man, class of 1923, with 21 years of service built on one sacred principle. Regulations exist for a reason. The Springfield M1903A4 is the authorized sniper rifle for a reason, Sergeant. It's been tested, standardized, proven in combat across 2 world wars. Your civilian hunting rifle is none of those things. With respect, sir, my civilian hunting rifle just killed a general at a distance your authorized rifles couldn't touch. The temperature in that tent dropped 20 degrees. Captain Morrison, standing beside Henry, actually winced. You don't talk back to full colonels. You especially don't talk back to Theodore Blackwood, who'd built his career on by-the-book operations and zero tolerance for cowboys. That shot was luck, Sergeant. One lucky shot doesn't change doctrine. Then let me prove it wasn't luck, sir. Blackwood leaned forward. Excuse me? Give me a test, sir. Any distance, any conditions. Let me show you what this rifle can do. For 10 seconds, nobody breathed. Blackwood studied this mountain boy sergeant who just challenged him to put Army doctrine on trial. Smart play or suicidal arrogance? Hard to tell. You want to demonstrate that your civilian toy outperforms military-issue weapons. Yes, sir. And when you fail? I won't fail, sir. Blackwood smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Very well, Sergeant. I'll arrange your demonstration. But understand this. When your Winchester fails, and it will fail, you'll surrender that weapon permanently. You'll face court-martial for smuggling unauthorized equipment, and you'll spend the rest of this war in a stockade. Are we clear? Henry's jaw tightened. Crystal clear, sir. Captain Morrison pulled Henry aside after the meeting. You just bet your freedom on a rifle shot. You understand that? Yes, sir. Blackwood's going to stack the deck against you. Impossible conditions. Moving targets. Wind. He wants you to fail. I know, sir. Morrison shook his head. Then why take the bet? Henry looked at his Winchester, leaning against the tent pole. Because if I don't, 40 more men die next time we hit a defensive line. Then 40 more. Then 40 more. This rifle can save lives, sir. Worth the risk. But saving Henry's ass required more than confidence. It required a miracle. Or more specifically, it required Major Robert Chen. Chen was Division Ordnance, a Chinese-American weapons specialist from San Francisco who'd spent the 1930s designing competition rifles for Olympic teams. He'd watched Henry's 800-yard shot through binoculars from the forward observation post. He'd done the ballistic calculations. He knew what he'd witnessed wasn't luck. It was mastery. Chen found Henry in the motor pool, cleaning his Winchester. Sergeant Lawson, we need to talk. 20 minutes later, Chen had laid out the situation. Blackwood's setting you up. He's already designing the test to make you fail. Extreme range, multiple wind zones, time pressure, moving targets if he can arrange it. Can he do that? He's a colonel. He can do whatever he wants. Henry's stomach sank. So, I'm screwed. Not necessarily. Chen pulled out a notebook. I've been studying your rifle. The Winchester Model 70 has a faster lock time than the Springfield. Smoother bolt throw. Better trigger. In the right hands, it's objectively superior for precision shooting. We just need to prove it. How? Chen smiled. We beat him at his own game. You demonstrate the Winchester against a Springfield under identical conditions. Same shooter, same targets, same everything. Let the rifles compete, not you versus Army doctrine. Make it scientific. Blackwood won't agree to that. He will if I propose it. I'm Division Ordnance. Weapons testing is literally my job. And I've got enough pull to make sure the test is fair. Henry studied this unexpected ally. Why are you helping me? Chen's smile faded. Because I'm tired of watching American boys die because some colonel is more worried about regulations than results. Your rifle can save lives. That matters more than Blackwood's ego. The test was scheduled for September 3, 1944. Location: an abandoned French army base outside Rennes. Distance: 600, 800, and 1,000 yards. Targets: man-sized silhouettes. Conditions: whatever the weather gods provided. Witnesses: Colonel Blackwood, Division Command Staff, and every sniper in the 2nd Infantry. Win, and Henry keeps his Winchester. Lose, and he goes to prison. No pressure. September 3rd dawned cold and windy. 15-mile-per-hour gusts from the northwest. Exactly the kind of conditions that turn precision shooting into roulette. Henry arrived at the range at 600 hours carrying both rifles, his Winchester and a standard-issue Springfield. Major Chen had insisted on the parallel test. Same shooter, both rifles, multiple distances. Let the equipment prove itself. Colonel Blackwood stood beside the firing line with his arms crossed, looking like a man waiting to enjoy an execution. 50 spectators gathered behind the safety line. Word had spread. The rebel sergeant versus Army regulations. Better than a movie. Chen briefed the test protocol. 6 shots per rifle at each distance. 600 yards first, then 800, then 1,000. Scoring. Hits versus misses. Rifle with the most hits wins. Any questions? Blackwood spoke up. One modification, Major. The 1,000-yard targets should be moving targets. Walking pace, left to right. Heads turned. Moving targets at 1,000 yards? That wasn't testing rifles. That was testing impossibility. Chen started to object, but Henry cut him off. Agreed, sir. Chen stared at him. Henry just loaded his Springfield and took position. The 600-yard phase went exactly as expected. Both rifles performed well. Henry put 5 of 6 Springfield rounds into the target.
The Winchester? 6 for 6. Center mass, grouping you could cover with a dinner plate. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. At 800 yards, the wind started playing tricks. The Springfield shots scattered. 2 hits, 4 misses. Blackwood smiled. Then Henry switched to his Winchester, the rifle that knew him, the rifle he'd shot 10,000 times. 6 shots, 6 hits. The crowd wasn't murmuring anymore. They were staring. But the 1,000-yard challenge was something else entirely. Moving targets at that range aren't about marksmanship. They're about predicting the future. Calculating where a target will be 1.2 seconds after you pull the trigger, while accounting for wind, bullet drop, and the target's walking speed. Chen had set up mechanical targets on rails, moving at 3 miles per hour. Human walking pace. Henry chambered a round in the Springfield, tracked the target, led it by what felt right, and fired. Miss. 6 feet behind the silhouette. He tried again, adjusting his lead. Another miss. By the 6th shot, he'd managed 1 lucky hit. Blackwood was practically glowing. Shall we call it there, Sergeant? Save yourself the embarrassment? Henry set down the Springfield and picked up his Winchester. The rifle fit his shoulder like it had grown there. He pressed his eye to the scope his father had mounted 8 years ago. The crosshairs found the moving target. And then something happened that nobody at that range could explain. Henry didn't calculate, didn't think. His mind went quiet, and his body took over. 10,000 practice rounds had programmed his muscles with a database of knowledge no classroom could teach. Angle, wind, speed, distance. His subconscious processed it all in microseconds. He led the target, squeezed, the Winchester cracked. 1.2 seconds later, the bullet struck the silhouette dead center. The crowd gasped. Henry worked the bolt. 2nd shot. Hit. 3rd shot. Hit. By the 6th shot, the spectators had gone completely silent. 6 moving targets at 1,000 yards. 6 perfect hits. With a civilian hunting rifle, they'd called a toy. Major Chen turned to Colonel Blackwood. Sir, the results are conclusive. The Winchester Model 70 in Sergeant Lawson's hands outperforms the Springfield M1903A4 at every measured distance. I recommend we authorize continued use of his personal weapon and explore wider adoption of the Winchester platform for specialized sniper operations. Blackwood's face looked like he'd swallowed glass. But he was a West Point man. The data was undeniable. Recommendation accepted. Sergeant Lawson is authorized to retain his Winchester for combat operations.
The crowd erupted in cheers. Henry just nodded and started cleaning his rifle. Within 2 weeks, Division Ordnance ordered 12 Winchester Model 70s for evaluation. Within a month, snipers across the 2nd Infantry were requesting permission to use personal rifles if they could pass Chen's qualification test. Within 6 weeks, the Winchester had killed 17 German officers, destroyed 3 radio stations, and eliminated 2 machine gun nests that had pinned down American advances. The toy rifle was revolutionizing American sniper doctrine. But success creates new problems. And the biggest problem was already forming in Berlin, where German intelligence had intercepted enough radio traffic to realize something had changed in American sniper operations. They were losing officers at unprecedented rates. Defensive positions were being neutralized from impossible distances. Someone or something had shifted the balance. And on September 28, 1944, Heinrich Himmler's office issued a classified directive to all SS and Wehrmacht units on the Western Front. Identify and eliminate the American super sniper. Budget unlimited. Method any means necessary. Henry Lawson had proven his Winchester could kill at distances nobody thought possible. But now the entire German military apparatus wanted him dead. And in Part 3, you'll see what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted. When German counter-snipers armed with advanced optics start tracking him across France. When a single shot from his Winchester becomes a death sentence for his entire unit. And when Henry faces the ultimate choice: keep shooting and watch his friends die, or surrender the rifle that made him a legend. 800 yards. 1 Winchester. 1 dead general. Henry Lawson had proven his toy rifle could outshoot military hardware. Division Command authorized the Winchester. Major Chen ordered 12 more. American sniper doctrine was changing. Everything should have been perfect, except for one small problem. The Germans noticed. When you kill 17 officers in 6 weeks, people pay attention. And when those people are Nazi intelligence analysts tracking casualty patterns across the Western Front, that attention becomes lethal. On September 28, 1944, a classified report landed on the desk of Oberst Friedrich Reinhardt, head of Wehrmacht counter-sniper operations. The report contained 3 months of data: officer casualties, engagement distances, shot patterns. The conclusion was undeniable. American sniper capability had increased by 340% since mid-August. Kill distances had extended from 400 yards to 800 plus. German command posts that should have been safe were becoming death traps. Reinhardt studied the numbers and reached the only logical conclusion: the Americans had developed a new weapon system, or worse, a new shooter. Within 48 hours, every German sniper unit on the Western Front received new orders. Priority 1: identify and eliminate the American super sniper. Reinhardt wasn't playing games. He pulled his 12 best marksmen from the Eastern Front, men who'd survived Stalingrad and Kursk, men who'd shot Russian officers through tank vision slits at 600 yards. He equipped them with captured American rifles to understand the enemy's capabilities. He gave them one directive: find him, kill him, make it public. Because Reinhardt understood psychological warfare. Killing the super sniper wouldn't just eliminate one shooter. It would shatter American morale and prove German superiority. The German counter-snipers arrived in France on October 3rd. Within a week, they'd set up observation posts covering every American sniper position in the 2nd Infantry sector. They studied patterns, analyzed shot angles, tracked radio chatter, and they started connecting dots. Multiple long-range kills from unusual positions. Always precise, always deadly. Always the same unit. 2nd Battalion, 2nd Infantry. The net was tightening. By October 12th, German intelligence had narrowed their target list to 3 American snipers in 2nd Battalion. By October 15th, they had a name: Sergeant Henry Lawson.
And a description. Carries a civilian hunting rifle instead of military issue.
But identifying Henry was only half the problem, because the Germans had their own crisis brewing. American air superiority was strangling German logistics. Fuel shortages were crippling armor divisions. Infantry units were undermanned and undersupplied. And now, German officers couldn't coordinate defenses without getting their heads blown off from impossible distances. Morale was collapsing. Reinhardt's snipers weren't just hunting one American. They were trying to stop a hemorrhage that was bleeding the Wehrmacht white. The pressure was immense, and pressure makes people desperate. October 18, 1944. A German deserter walked into 2nd Battalion lines carrying intelligence that made Major Chen's blood run cold. The Germans knew about Henry. They knew about the Winchester, and they deployed a kill team specifically to hunt him. 12 elite snipers, Eastern Front veterans,
Armed with Mauser K98S with ZF4 scopes and explicit orders to make Henry's death as public and brutal as possible.
"They want to crucify you," Chen told Henry that night. "Make an example. Break American sniper morale." Henry cleaned his Winchester, unbothered. "Let them try." "This isn't a joke, Sergeant. These men are professionals. They've killed hundreds." "So have I, sir." Chen shook his head. "Not like this. They're not defending positions. They're hunting you specifically. Every time you take a shot, you give away your position. They'll be waiting." But Henry couldn't stop shooting, because stopping meant German officers could coordinate, meant defensive lines would hold, meant American infantry would die attacking prepared positions. The Winchester had become essential to the advance. Pulling Henry off the line would cost lives. So he kept shooting, and the Germans kept hunting. For 3 weeks, it was a chess match played with bullets and corpses. Henry would take a position, kill a target, displace before German counterfire arrived. The Germans adapted. They started using decoys, officers in fake uniforms standing in exposed positions while real commanders stayed hidden. Henry adapted back. He studied movement patterns, voice authority, how subordinates reacted. You can fake a uniform, can't fake how men salute. The kill count climbed. 23 confirmed, 27, 31. Each kill bought American infantry another yard of advance. But each kill also gave the Germans more data. Shot angles, timing patterns, favored positions. Reinhardt's net kept tightening. And then came November 8th, 1944, the day everything changed. Bastogne, Belgium. The Germans were massing for what would become the Battle of the Bulge, but nobody knew it yet. 2nd Battalion was holding a salient northeast of the town, a thin American line stretched across frozen farmland. Intelligence reported a German regimental commander establishing a new headquarters in a stone farmhouse, 900 yards from American positions. Oberst Karl Hoffmann, veteran of North Africa, architect of 3 successful German counteroffenses. Killing him would disrupt the entire German command structure in the sector. Division wanted him dead. They sent Henry. November 8th, 04:45 hours. Temperature 28 degrees. Wind gusting 20 miles per hour from the northwest. Henry infiltrated to a bombed-out barn 900 yards from the German farmhouse. He set up his Winchester on a pile of frozen hay bales. checked his sight picture, calculated wind drift, and waited. Hoffman appeared at 6:30, walking from his staff car to the farmhouse. Henry tracked him through the scope. Exhaled, finger on trigger, and then something made him freeze. A glint of light. 300 yards to his left. Second-story window of a burned cottage. Someone was up there. Someone with optics. Someone who'd been waiting for Henry to shoot. The German counter-sniper had found him first. Henry didn't panic. Panic gets you killed. He smoothly shifted his Winchester from the farmhouse to the cottage window. 300 yards. Easy range. He found the glint, saw the shape behind it. A man with a rifle. Mauser K98K ZF4 scope. Aimed directly at the barn. Aimed at where Henry would be if he took the shot on Hoffman. The German was good. Had predicted Henry's position perfectly. Was waiting for the muzzle flash that would reveal his exact location. One shot, and the German would put a 7.92 millimeter round through Henry's skull before he could chamber a second round. But the German made one mistake. He focused so completely on the barn that he didn't scan his flanks. Didn't notice the second American sniper team moving into position 400 yards to his right. Corporal James Mitchell, Henry's spotter, had seen the glint too. Had radioed another sniper team. Had set a trap within a trap. Now 3 American rifles were aimed at one German. The German squeezed his trigger at the empty barn. The shot broke frozen silence. Missed by 3 feet, hitting hay where Henry wasn't. Mitchell fired. The German's head snapped back. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Henry swung back to the farmhouse. Hoffman was running for cover. 900 yards. Moving target. 5 seconds before he disappeared inside. Henry led him. 2 feet. 3 feet. Squeezed. The Winchester cracked. Hoffman stumbled. Fell. Didn't get up. But that's when things went completely insane. Because Hoffman wasn't the real target. He was bait. The farmhouse exploded with muzzle flashes. 4 more German snipers hidden in the building, all firing at Henry's position simultaneously. Reinhardt had set his own trap, used Hoffman as bait to draw out the American super sniper. Expected Henry to take the shot and die in the counterfire. What Reinhardt didn't expect was Henry's sixth sense for danger. Henry was already rolling sideways when the German volley arrived. Bullets shredded the hay bales where he'd been, punched through wood. One round missed his head by 4 inches. Mitchell returned fire. The second American sniper team opened up. Suddenly it was a full-scale sniper duel. Americans versus Germans. 7 shooters exchanging fire across frozen Belgian farmland. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Felt like 11 hours. Henry moved 3 times, firing from different positions, never staying exposed for more than 10 seconds. The Germans were good, professional, disciplined, but they'd trained for defensive operations. Henry had trained for this exact scenario in the Virginia mountains, shooting competitions where you had seconds to acquire targets and move. He killed 2 more Germans. Mitchell killed 1. The second American team killed another. When it ended, 6 German snipers lay dead. 0 American casualties. And Oberst Hoffman was still dead in the farmhouse courtyard, his command structure decapitated. The victory rippled outward like a shockwave. Word spread through 2nd Battalion within hours, through 2nd Infantry by nightfall. The super sniper had faced Germany's best and won. Not just won, dominated. 6 elite Eastern Front veterans dead. The American advance continued. But more importantly, something shifted in the German command. Reinhardt's kill team was destroyed. His best shooters were corpses. and the psychological impact was devastating. German officers stopped appearing near the front lines. Command posts moved 5 miles to the rear. Coordination suffered. Defensive lines became fragmented. The entire German tactical doctrine changed to avoid American snipers. Intelligence reports from late November showed the impact in numbers. German officer casualties dropped 67%. Not because American snipers were less effective, but because German officers were hiding. Command efficiency decreased by an estimated 40%. Orders took longer to transmit. Tactical responses slowed. The Wehrmacht was fighting with one hand tied behind its back, terrified of long-range American shooters. Major Chen compiled the data for division command. Sergeant Lawson's Winchester has effectively neutralized German tactical command in our entire sector. They're not just losing officers. They're too scared to use their officers effectively. The Pentagon noticed. By December 1944, the Winchester Model 70 was being evaluated for mass procurement. Sniper schools were being redesigned around the principle Henry had proven. Weapon familiarity matters more than standardization. The army that mocked his toy rifle was now trying to copy it. Henry's confirmed kill count reached 37, but the real number was higher. How do you count the German officers who stayed hidden? The attacks that didn't happen because no one could coordinate them. The American lives saved because enemy command structure was paralyzed. On December 15, 1944, Henry received the Silver Star. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism in action against the enemy." What it should have said, "For proving that one man with the right weapon can change an entire war." But Henry didn't care about medals. He cared about the Winchester, about his father's gift, about the rifle that turned a Virginia mountain boy into a legend. And as he stood on that Belgian field accepting his medal, he had no idea that 30 years later, his Winchester would be hanging in the Smithsonian, or that his techniques would be taught at every sniper school in America, or that military historians would study the November 8th battle as a masterclass in counter-sniper operations. All he knew was this: they'd called his rifle a toy, and that toy had just won the most important gunfight of the European theater. But the story doesn't end there, because in Part 4, you'll discover what happened to Henry after the war, how his Winchester changed civilian shooting forever, how the lessons from one sergeant's refusal to follow regulations saved thousands of lives in future conflicts, and the final shot Henry took with that rifle, 50 years later, that proves some bonds between a man and his weapon never break. The legend was built. Now comes the legacy. From a deer rifle his instructors mocked, to 37 confirmed kills that paralyzed German command. From a Virginia gunsmith's son to the most feared sniper on the Western Front, Henry Lawson and his Winchester Model 70 had proven the impossible, that familiarity beats standardization, that the right weapon in the right hands changes wars, that sometimes the toy is deadlier than the tool. The Germans were terrified. American doctrine was rewritten. The Winchester became a legend. But here's the question nobody asked while Henry was killing generals and winning gunfights. What happened to the man who refused to put down his father's rifle? Because the story of Henry Lawson doesn't end with medals and glory. It ends somewhere most war stories never reach. And the twist is this: success in war doesn't guarantee peace afterward. The war ended for Henry Lawson on May 8, 1945. VE Day. Germany surrendered. American troops celebrated across Europe. Henry sat alone in a Belgian farmhouse, cleaning his Winchester for the last time on foreign soil, thinking about the 37 men he'd killed through that scope. 37 faces he'd never forget. 37 triggers he'd pulled. The Army wanted him to stay, offered him a commission, a position at sniper school, a chance to build his reputation into a career. Colonel Blackwood, the same man who'd tried to court-martial him, personally recommended him for officer training. The Army needs men like you, Lawson, men who think differently. Henry declined. He'd proven his point, saved lives, changed doctrine. But he was tired. 25 years old and feeling 50. He wanted to go home. He returned to the Shenandoah Valley in June 1945, carrying his Winchester and a silver star he never wore. His father was waiting at the train station, older, grayer, but still strong. They didn't talk much during the ride home. Thomas Lawson understood what his son had seen through that rifle scope. Some things don't need words. Henry took over the gunsmith shop, just like his father had always planned. He married Sarah Mitchell, a school teacher from the next town over, in 1947. They had 3 children. He never talked about the war at family dinners, never mentioned the generals or the German counter-snipers or the 11-minute battle at Bastogne. When customers asked about his silver star display on the shop wall, he'd just smile and say, "Old story. Not very interesting." But the Winchester hung above his workbench every single day for the next 40 years. Oiled, maintained, ready. Henry never fired it again after the war. Not once. People asked why he kept a rifle he wouldn't shoot. Henry's answer was always the same. "That rifle and I have an agreement. It did its job. Now it gets to rest." His children tried to understand. His son Robert asked once, when he was 12, "Dad, did you really kill people with that rifle?" Henry looked at the Winchester for a long moment. "I protected people with that rifle." Big difference. Robert never asked again. The years passed. Henry's gunsmith shop became the best in Virginia. Politicians, competition shooters, even military officers came to have their rifles tuned by the man who'd outshot the German army. Henry never advertised his war record, never traded on his legend, just did good work, treated customers fairly, and kept his Winchester clean. But here's what most people never knew. Henry suffered. Nightmares about missed shots, dreams where his Winchester jammed and German snipers killed his friends. Survivor's guilt about the men who didn't come home. He never sought help, never talked about it. Men of his generation didn't. Sarah knew, though. She'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find him in the shop, holding the Winchester, staring at nothing. Meanwhile, Major Robert Chen kept his promise. The Winchester Model 70 became standard issue for American precision marksmen by 1946. The rifle Henry fought to keep became the rifle the Army couldn't live without. Korea, 1950. American snipers using Winchester Model 70s dominated North Korean and Chinese forces at ranges previously thought impossible. Vietnam, 1965. Marine Corps snipers credited the Winchester platform with thousands of confirmed kills. Carlos Hathcock, the legendary Marine sniper with 93 confirmed kills, used a Winchester Model 70 with an 8-power uninertal scope for his most famous shots. When asked why he chose that rifle, Hathcock said, "Because Henry Lawson proved it works." But the Winchester's legacy extended beyond military use. The rifle that changed sniper doctrine also revolutionized civilian long-range shooting. Competition shooters in the 1950s and 60s dominated with Winchester Model 70s. The rifle's reputation for accuracy made it the gold standard. Winchester's marketing department called it the Rifleman's Rifle, a title that stuck for 70 years. By conservative estimates, Winchester sold over 3.5 million Model 70 rifles between 1936 and 2006. Hunters worldwide trusted it. Competitive shooters won championships with it. and every single one existed in the shadow of the rifle that killed a general at 800 yards. The U.S. military eventually moved beyond the Winchester. The M21, M24, and M40 sniper systems replaced it in the 1960s and 70s. But the principle Henry fought for remained. Modern military sniper programs emphasize what Henry proved in a Belgian farmhouse. Weapon familiarity matters more than specifications. Snipers customize their rifles extensively. Triggers are individually tuned. Stocks are fitted to specific shooters. Ammunition is hand-selected. The goal is creating exactly what Henry described to Captain Morrison in 1944. A single, integrated system where shooter and rifle are one. Marine Corps sniper training manuals still reference the Lawson principle. Mastery of a familiar weapon beats mediocrity with superior equipment. But the real lesson wasn't about rifles. It was about institutional resistance to innovation. Henry Lawson brought a provably superior solution to a deadly problem, and the Army's first response was mockery and threats. How many other Henry Lawsons were there? How many soldiers with unconventional ideas were silenced by regulations? How many innovations died because some colonel couldn't admit a sergeant knew better? Military historians estimate that institutional resistance to change cost the Allies 6 months in the European theater. 6 months. Thousands of lives. All because established systems resist new ideas, even when those ideas save lives. Consider other examples. British commandos invented modern special operations, but the traditional army fought their existence for years. American tank destroyers proved their worth, but armor doctrine took years to adapt. Radar won the Battle of Britain, but RAF leadership nearly rejected it as unreliable. Pattern recognition emerges. Institutions resist innovation, especially from unexpected sources. The cook, the mechanic, the farmer, the gunsmith's son. Their ideas threaten established hierarchies. Success proves the hierarchy wrong. Nobody in power likes being proven wrong. Henry's story resonates today precisely because this dynamic hasn't changed. Corporate environments resist innovative employees. Educational systems suppress unconventional thinking. Military organizations still struggle to adopt new technologies quickly. The only difference is awareness. Modern innovation theory studies exactly what happened to Henry Lawson in 1944. Disruptive innovation from edge actors, forcing institutional change. Business schools teach it. Military academies analyze it. All because a Virginia mountain boy refused to surrender his father's deer rifle. But here's the detail almost nobody knows, the twist that completes this story. In 1994, 50 years after that 800-yard shot on General Schultz, the Smithsonian Institution approached Henry Lawson. They wanted his Winchester for the National Museum of American History. Military weapons collection. Display case next to Audie Murphy's uniform and Jimmy Doolittle's goggles. A permanent exhibition. The rifle that changed sniper doctrine. Henry was 73 years old, retired. Sarah had passed 2 years earlier. His children wanted him to donate the rifle. National recognition, historical preservation, a legacy cemented forever. Henry refused. That rifle isn't history. It's personal. The Smithsonian increased their offer, promised a dedicated exhibit. Henry refused again. His children couldn't understand. "Dad, this is your chance to be remembered." Henry looked at his Winchester, hanging above the workbench where it had hung for 49 years. "I don't need to be remembered. The men I saved, they remember." That's enough. The Winchester stayed in Virginia, and in 1996, when Henry Lawson died at 75, his will contained one specific instruction. The Winchester Model 70, serial number 15847, is to be buried with me. His family honored his wish.
Henry Lawson was buried in Shenandoah Memorial Gardens with his silver star, his father's pocket watch, and the rifle that killed 37 Germans and saved thousands of Americans. The Winchester that the Army called a toy, the rifle that changed warfare, the weapon that proved familiarity beats specifications. Gone. Lost to history. Except here's the final twist. Henry's son Robert donated detailed photographs and measurements of the rifle to the Smithsonian before the burial. The museum created an exact replica for their exhibition, and that replica hangs in the National Museum of American History today, with a plaque reading, Winchester Model 70, replica of the rifle carried by Sergeant Henry Lawson, credited with revolutionizing American sniper doctrine in World War II. So from a Virginia gunsmith's workshop to the battlefields of France to a grave in the Shenandoah Valley, one rifle's journey proved a truth that transcends war. The right tool matters less than the right person. Henry Lawson saved an estimated 2,000 American lives through direct action and doctrine change. His Winchester influenced 70 years of sniper development. His refusal to follow regulations when lives were at stake created the modern principle of adaptive customization in military weapons. And the rifle they mocked became the rifle they copied. That's the power of believing in yourself when everyone else calls you crazy. That's the legacy of refusing to surrender what you know works, even when the institution demands conformity. And that's why sometimes the deadliest weapon on the battlefield isn't the biggest, newest, or most official. Sometimes it's just a deer rifle in the hands of a man who knows how to use it. That's the difference between a tool and a legend.